There's a particular kind of person who moves through life like a ghost in their own story. They show up for everyone. They listen when others need to speak. They offer their time, their energy, their presence without hesitation. But when the room goes quiet and someone asks what they need, their voice disappears. They smile and say nothing. They've learned something most people never consciously choose, that needing feels dangerous, that asking feels like weakness, that expressing what lives inside them might cost more than silence ever could. This isn't shyness. It's not introversion or humility. It's something deeper. It's the quiet loneliness of people who have learned to survive by erasing themselves. They carry their needs like secrets, buried so deep that even they sometimes forget they exist. And the world around them, distracted by louder voices and clearer demands, rarely notices the cost of their silence. Psychologically, this pattern often begins in childhood. A child learns early whether their needs are welcome or burdensome. When a parent is overwhelmed, absent, or unpredictable, the child adapts. They stop crying when no one comes. They stop asking when the answer is always no. They learn to read the emotional temperature of a room and adjust themselves accordingly. This is called emotional self-sufficiency, but it's not strength. It's a survival mechanism born from necessity. If this perspective resonates, you can support the video by liking it. Attachment theory explains this with painful clarity. When caregivers are inconsistent or dismissive, children develop what researchers call avoidant attachment. They learn that connection comes with conditions, that love is safer when you don't need it too much. So they grow into adults who can give endlessly but struggle to receive, who can hold space for others but feel uncomfortable when that space is offered back. Their nervous system learned early that expressing need leads to disappointment or rejection. So the body itself learned to suppress the signal before it ever reaches the throat. These people become masters of invisible labor. They notice when someone is struggling before anyone else does. They anticipate needs, solve problems, smooth over tensions. But when their own heart aches, they stay silent. When exhaustion settles into their bones, they push through. When loneliness wraps around them like a cold fog, they tell themselves it's temporary. They tell themselves they're fine. But fine is often just another word for unheard. And beneath that word lives an ocean of unspoken longing. The longing to be seen without having to perform, to be cared for without having to ask, to matter in the quiet, ordinary moments when nothing is wrong but everything feels heavy. Comment silent if this describes your experience. The loneliness that comes from rarely expressing needs is different from ordinary solitude. It's not the absence of people. It's the presence of people who don't know you. You can be surrounded by friends, family, colleagues, and still feel profoundly alone. Because connection without vulnerability is just proximity. And vulnerability requires the very thing they've trained themselves to avoid. Letting someone see that beneath the competence, beneath the calm exterior, there is a human being who sometimes needs help too. Neuroscience offers insight into why this pattern persists. The brain's reward system lights up when we help others. Acts of service release dopamine and oxytocin, creating a sense of purpose and connection. But for those who rarely express their own needs, this creates a one-sided loop. They experience the chemical satisfaction of giving, which reinforces the behavior, while the act of receiving remains uncomfortable and unfamiliar. The brain hasn't learned to associate being cared for with safety. Instead, it associates it with vulnerability, which the nervous system still interprets as threat. Type YES if this helped you understand something about yourself. There's also a cognitive distortion at play. Many people who struggle to express needs carry a core belief that they don't deserve help unless they've earned it. They measure their worth by how much they give, not by their inherent value as human beings. This creates an impossible equation. If worth must be earned through service, then needing becomes evidence of failure. So they keep giving, keep performing, keep proving, trapped in a cycle that can never satisfy the deeper hunger for unconditional acceptance. The loneliness intensifies because they often attract relationships that reinforce the pattern. They become surrounded by people who are comfortable taking, who appreciate the help but never think to ask how the helper is doing. This isn't always malicious, it's often unconscious. The person who never asks for anything trains others not to offer. They become so skilled at appearing fine that people believe the performance, but inside, something withers. The part of them that wants to be known, to be held, to be met with the same care they extend to others, that part grows quieter over time. It stops knocking on the door of connection. It stops hoping that someone will notice the weight they carry. And in that silence, loneliness becomes not just a feeling, but a way of being. If someone you know might benefit from this, feel free to share it. Psychologists describe this as relational hunger. It's the ache of being known only partially, of existing in others' lives as a role, the helper, the strong one, the reliable one, but never as a full person with needs, fears, and fragility. This kind of loneliness doesn't scream, it whispers. It shows up as chronic fatigue, as a vague sense of emptiness, as the strange feeling of being both essential to everyone and invisible to them at the same time. What makes this particularly painful is that these individuals often possess profound emotional intelligence. They understand others deeply. They can read between the lines of what's said and unsaid. They know how to create safety for people to be vulnerable. But they've never learned to create that safety for themselves. They've never learned that needing doesn't diminish them, that asking doesn't make them a burden, that the people who truly love them would want to know when they're struggling. Breaking this pattern requires something counterintuitive. It requires risking the very thing they've spent their lives avoiding, disappointment. Because to express a need is to open the door to the possibility that it won't be met, that the person might not show up, that the vulnerability might be met with indifference or discomfort. And for someone whose nervous system is wired to expect that outcome, the risk feels unbearable. If this gave you clarity, comment needs below. But there's another truth beneath the fear, that continuing to live without expressing needs guarantees the loneliness will persist, that the people who care about them can't offer what they don't know is needed, that intimacy, real intimacy, requires the courage to be incomplete in front of another human being. To say, I'm struggling, to say, I need you, to say, I can't carry this alone. The transformation doesn't happen all at once. It begins with small experiments in vulnerability, asking a friend to listen instead of always being the listener, admitting when something is too much instead of powering through, letting someone help without immediately returning the favor. These tiny acts of self-expression feel enormous to someone who has spent years in silence. But each one teaches the nervous system something new. That needing doesn't destroy connection. That asking can actually deepen it. That the right people don't love you less when you're human, they love you more. Because the loneliness of rarely expressing needs is not a life sentence. It's a pattern learned in response to pain, and what was learned can be unlearned, not by becoming someone different, but by slowly, gently giving voice to the part of you that's been waiting all along to be heard. If this understanding resonates with you, take a moment to like this video. What's one need you've been carrying in silence? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to explore more about the hidden patterns that shape our inner lives, consider subscribing. This channel exists to help you see yourself more clearly, not to judge what you find, but to understand it. Sometimes awareness itself is the first step toward becoming less alone.